Right now, somewhere near you, there's a baby sleeping in a temperature-controlled room on a cushioned mattress, wrapped in layers specifically designed to keep them at exactly the right warmth. A monitor watches them breathe. An app on your phone tells you if the room gets too cold. Now take all of that away. No hospital, no formula, no pediatrician on speed dial, no clean water, no antibiotics for a fever that spikes at 3 a.m. in the middle of a frozen winter, with no sunrise for weeks. Just a newborn, raw, screaming, completely helpless. And you. That was the deal for almost every human parent who ever lived. And here's the number that should hit you harder than it does. In the ancient world, roughly half of all children died before the age of 5. Half. Not in a war, not in a famine, just childhood. Just being alive was enough to kill you, which means every single one of your ancestors beat those odds. Every one of them was the child that made it, and somebody kept them alive long enough to do that. So how? How do soft, helpless, screaming infants survive ice ages, predators, infections, starvation, and a world with zero medical knowledge? That's what I want to show you, because it's one of the most brutal love stories in human history, and almost nobody talks about how close every single one of us came to never existing at all. Let's be honest about what they were up against. Because no hospitals sounds like an inconvenience, it was not an inconvenience. A baby can't regulate its own body temperature for weeks after birth. Put a newborn in cold air without proper warmth, and it will die. Not eventually, fast. A baby can't digest solid food. It needs constant feeding. Breast milk was the only option, and if the mother got sick, got injured, or died in childbirth, that was it. There was no formula. There was no backup plan. Infant mortality wasn't a tragedy back then. It was a statistical expectation. Parents knew. They had to prepare emotionally for the very real chance that the baby in their arms might not make it to their first winter. And winter was the killer. Always winter. So what did they do? Let's go through it. It started with skin, literally. A newborn's first survival tool wasn't a tool at all. It was the mother's body. Skin-to-skin contact is something we now call a medical technique in NICUs. They put premature babies on the mother's bare chest and call it kangaroo care. It stabilizes heart rate, it regulates temperature, it cuts infant mortality significantly. Ancient mothers were doing this not because a doctor told them to, but because the baby stopped crying when they held it close, and crying meant danger, and danger could get everyone killed. They figured out in practice what scientists figured out in labs 10,000 years later. The baby lived against the mother's skin, carried in slings made from animal hide, pressed against her chest while she worked, while she walked, while she slept. The baby was essentially an extension of the mother's body for the first months of life. And that wasn't just warmth, that was protection. A baby on your chest can't be silently taken by a predator in the night. Then there was the village. Here's something that'll flip how you see early humans. They didn't raise children alone, not even close. Grandmothers are one of the strangest things in nature. Humans are one of the only species where females live long past the age they can reproduce. From a pure survival standpoint, that makes no sense, unless the grandmother's entire purpose was to keep the grandchildren alive. Scientists actually have a name for this, the grandmother hypothesis. The idea is that grandmothers fed, watched, and protected grandchildren while the mother was pregnant again, or working. And the data supports it. Children with involved grandmothers had significantly higher survival rates in ancient populations. Your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, 100 times back, probably kept a child alive that had no business surviving, and that child is you. But it wasn't just grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, neighboring women. There's evidence of something called alloparenting across ancient human groups, other adults actively sharing the raising of children who weren't theirs. The whole group had a stake in every baby surviving, because every adult that made it to hunting or gathering age was another person keeping the group fed. Your child surviving was everyone's problem, in the best possible way. Now here's the part most people don't know. Ancient mothers were incredibly strategic about when they had children. Breastfeeding suppresses fertility. That's not an accident. In ancient populations, women breastfed for 2 to 4 years per child. This naturally spaced children apart, because 2 helpless infants at the same time in the Ice Age wasn't a blessing, it was a death sentence for both of them. 1 child at a time, full attention, full resources, maximum survival chance. And when resources got truly desperate, and this is the dark part, some ancient populations made brutal decisions about which children could be saved and which couldn't. Twins were sometimes considered impossible to raise equally in survival conditions. A child born severely disabled in a world of constant physical demand couldn't always survive, and the group knew it. These weren't monsters making those decisions. They were parents doing the math in a world where one extra mouth to feed in a bad winter could mean the whole family died. The cruelty of it is in the conditions, not the people. They also became accidental scientists. Without knowing what a germ was, ancient people figured out that sick children needed to be separated, that certain plants reduced fever, that keeping wounds covered with specific leaves stopped the infection from spreading. Willow bark, the original aspirin, has been found at ancient sites alongside evidence of its medicinal use. They didn't know about salicylic acid, they just knew the child stopped burning up when they used it. Honey was packed into wounds because it worked, even though no one knew it had antimicrobial properties. Clay was used to draw out infection. Certain roots induced vomiting when a child ate something poisonous. Thousands of years of watching children die taught them what helped. And they passed it down, mother to daughter, shaman to apprentice, a chain of hard-won knowledge stretching back further than we can trace. And then there's fire. Again, always fire. A crying baby in the dark attracts predators. Cold kills infants faster than adults. Ancient families kept fire burning through the night, specifically to maintain the temperature zone where a baby could survive. Someone always stayed awake. Someone always watched the fire. Someone always listened for the sounds outside. That's not an exaggeration. That was the actual job. Night watch. Every night. For years per child. The cost of keeping a child alive was someone else's sleep, someone else's energy, someone else's warmth being shared before their own. That's what love looked like before greeting cards existed. Now let me tell you the part that genuinely gets me. In the ancient world, children weren't named immediately. Not always. In many cultures, you waited days, sometimes weeks, until it seemed like the child was going to survive. Because naming something makes it real, makes the loss unbearable. And ancient parents had already learned the hard way not to get too attached too fast. That single detail, waiting to name your child until you were sure they'd live, says more about what ancient life actually felt like than any cave painting ever could. And then, in a few thousand years that are nothing on this timeline, we figured out clean water, vaccines, antibiotics, formula, incubators. Child mortality dropped from nearly 50% to under 4% globally, under 1% in developed countries. We didn't just get better at keeping children alive, we basically solved it. The same species that packed moss into a hide sling and prayed to whatever gods they had that the baby would make it to morning, that species cracked the genetic code of viruses, built machines that breathe for infants born 3 months too early, and mapped every disease that ever killed a child. All of that started with someone staying up all night next to a fire, refusing to let the cold take one more thing. We didn't survive because we were the strongest. We survived because we refused to let each other die. And the proof of that? You. Right now, reading this. Every soft, helpless version of you that ever existed, someone fought for them. Don't forget that.